Yeah, we drove this one before. You saw our first drive of this, and it was a fun car, but first drives only give you a little bit of a taste of a car. This, we needed to take bigger bites and really dive in and figure out what it is. This is the 2016 Infiniti Q50S 3.0T Red Sport 400. The name is way too long. It's way too long. Let's just call it the Infiniti Q50 Red Sport. We needed to properly test this car, so we came here to the Hooniverse Highway Hooning Grounds. The roads around San Antonio were nice enough, but this is our curvy test track. This is our home. This is where we wring the most that we can wring out of a car without going to a racetrack. And that's what we're gonna do today. So, we've driven this car before. We did a first drive of it, and it was fun. But it was around the streets of San Antonio into Texas Hill Country, which is a nice area to be, but it's not our home turf. This is the Hooniverse Highway Hooning Grounds. It's a secret, not really. It's off Ortega Highway. And I like it here because it's twisty and turny and there's elevation and there's a nice scenic background and I can push a car hard. And I can do so without a lot of traffic. Very little. So this is where we're going to really experience the Infiniti Q50S 3.0T Red Sport, the car with too long of a name, but a wonderful engine. Under the hood, we're dealing with a 3-liter twin turbocharged V6 engine. It makes 400 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque, and it's paired with the 7-speed paddle shiftable automatic gearbox. This is a pretty sweet engine. Gone is the VQ series. Long live the VR series. This is the new one. Now there's a lesser powered version of this that you can get. There's a 300 horsepower Infiniti Q50. It's the same engine, except this one gets an extra water pump. The turbo boost is about double. And there's some other cooling going on. So there's some changes. So you can't just get the 300 horsepower one and boost it and you'll be good. Infiniti has some other things in store, which is why this one costs more. The car I'm driving, as tested, is $57,000. It's a lot of money, but when you want this much horsepower and this much fun behind the wheel of a near luxury or luxury sedan, you gotta pay to get it. Speaking of luxury, the cabin here is much nicer than the prior generation car. You've got a great looking center stack here. The 2 screens actually work well. I don't always love the whole 2-screen deal, but here Infiniti has done it nicely. I've got the nav up, I've got my music up, and the lower screen, the resolution on it is fantastic. The upper screen actually looks a little bit dated, especially when you have this lower screen staring you in the face. They need to update their nav software, they need to make it look a little prettier, and they'll be able to do it, but it's just not there yet. Now, what's the deal with this car? As I've been caning it on these back roads, I've been getting more and more confident. It's a rear-wheel drive car sending 400 horsepower out there. That's a lot of fun. This thing can be tail happy. You can turn traction control almost all the way off with just a press of the button. And there are also driver selectable modes. There's a drive mode switch down here. It starts off in standard, then it goes to sport and sport plus. You can also go the other way, and below that is eco and snow. And there's also a personal one where you can adjust and fine tune things. I just put it in sport plus when I'm out here having fun, and it responds like I'd hope it would. The throttle feels good, the steering tightens up, the suspension feels nice and stiff. The gearbox is just kind of okay. If you leave it on its own, it does pretty good. If you try to start shifting and playing with it, it's all right because 3rd gear is kind of tall, so you can just kind of hang it there and it wind it out to $7,000. But the shifts themselves are a little bit slower than I'd like, especially for a car that calls itself Red Sport. You know, it sounds sporty. I would like to see a different gearbox in here, but the one that's in here now is all right. So the big questions we need to answer here. First, is the Red Sport fun? Because I like fun cars. And yes, it's fun. You can have a lot of fun. Is the Red Sport fast? Yes. I've been getting more and more confident as I've been traversing the Hooniverse Highway Hooning Grounds, pushing the car harder and faster, and it just kind of hangs in there. Where it lets you down is in the steering. Great engine, okay gearbox, don't really love the steering. This has the drive-by-wire setup, so technically the steering wheel is not connected to the front wheels. There is a mechanical backup in case the system fails, but this is a drive-by-wire steering system. and the feel is just not there. The whole purpose of a system like this is to eliminate feel through the steering wheel, reduce the amount of vibrations. Now in Sport Plus, it kind of relaxes and lets some vibrations through. In Standard and Sport, it definitely, it's a pretty numb steering wheel. But they do that on purpose because there is a luxury buyer who gets the Q50 that wants that. It gives you less driver fatigue the less you're moving the wheel. So there's something to be said for that. But in the Red Sport version, I almost wish they would just ditch it. And I know they would never offer a hydraulic system. They don't need to go full hydraulic. There's some really good tuning on the electric systems out there. It's just with this full disconnect between the steering wheel and the front wheels, you lose all that feel. You do not know what the front wheels are doing at all. I would much rather have the front end talking to me just like the back end does. But you're not going to get that. Now, once you get past that and you build up some confidence, you realize you can really just start throwing this thing into corners and it responds in kind. Grab a paddle, downshift into the corner, come out, grab the other paddle, upshift, and you're good to go. So that was fun, right? That's what this car is. This car is fun. Japan does its luxury sports sedans in a pretty good way. They're not the fastest, but they're pretty great. This car reminds me a lot of the Lexus GS-F. It's a car that you might put it in the same category as the M5 and the E63. It's not as fast as those cars. It's more affordable. It's nice and luxurious inside because it is a Lexus. The ride quality's there, but you can have a ton of fun in that car. That's what's going on with this Infiniti on a smaller scale. It's not as fast as a C63 or a BMW M3 and M4. It's not as fast as a Cadillac ATS-V. So while Germany and America truly bring the heat, Japan kind of goes right down the middle, and that's okay. And there's a market there, and I think there's a market for this car. Does it do everything well? No. We'd replace the steering, we'd replace the gearbox, but the engine is fantastic. The rear-wheel drive happiness is just wonderful. The interior is pretty damn great, and the seats are comfortable. So if you're one of those guys who wants to toe the line between luxury and sport, but don't want to go full bananas crazy ATS-V or M3, and you don't want to go full soft luxury like a Lexus ES350 or something like that, here you go. This is your car, the Infiniti Q50 Red Sport.
We Damn Boys. I am not part of We Damn Boys Media. I am not cool enough for that.
I personally like this lumpy look. I think it fits this car well. I think it fits the rest of the lineup well. And I mean lumpy, I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm gonna start this over because I'm rambling.